What's coming off around here?
If you guys playing railroad anymore today, there's a landslide, a new cut.
Hi, and welcome to episode 16 of Fun with HO Scale Stuff. In this episode, I've set out to do a repurpose of a damaged laptop in order to run JMRI. This will be a process, and it's going to unfold as I explore the separate pieces of the overall project. So I hope that you share my excitement with yet another electronic-based aspect of model railroading. My next objective was to add a backdrop to the benchwork that exists right now, and been turning it over in my mind. And one of the things that I turned over, as I say in my mind, was that the general idea was to begin putting up some scenery. And so the thought was that I would need a backdrop to do that, but I do not need a backdrop to be able to start establishing my yard. And I may have pointed that out in a number of cases, that in a number of previous episodes, that this particular benchwork here is to serve as the service area. So the yard is going to be laid out in this space. And I don't have a whole lot yet that I was going to do for the yard work. I did come up with a water tower concept. This is going to be it's an end cap for pipe plastic, and I figured I could use that as a water tower. So I just need to get that going. So originally I had conceived of building this water tower, and I don't have the kit. I was just going to scratch build it, which would have been a cool challenge. I picked up a bunch of dimensions off of it and decided not to do that one. I've actually got the plan is to make this look like a steel water tower and just implement a water tower in that way. So I've been thinking about the different types of structures that I'll need. And in a previous episode, I did talk about what the service yard would require. I could go over that again. But for now, this is kind of a project that I've decided I'm going to hold off on that. I'm hoping to have track laid by Christmas this year, but I get interrupted by other things. There's a lot of stuff going on besides the hobby. So some of you may recall, and I'm showing it right now, in a previous episode, I'll mark what it was up here. I actually tried to repair and successfully repaired the power. Let's see, where is that? Okay, the power connector on this PC right here had gotten so loose that when you plugged in the power, it wouldn't connect. So I took it apart, repaired the connector successfully, but in doing that, I damaged all of the serial I/O on this computer. As it was unable to, you can't use the USB ports anymore. They won't work. There's no serial capability on this. But I wanted to run ultimately when I get a railroad built, whenever that happens, I want to run it with JMRI. I downloaded and installed it on this computer, and I've decided that the only way I'm going to be able to do that is I've got to somehow improvise a means to implement a COM port. So I have a serial port, because the JMRI will not let you, it's not going to allow you to bring up a throttle panel, I guess they call it, the panel that you could actually run a train with, or anything else for that regard, unless you tell it which type of train control, DCC supplier you're using. and they want the serial port installed in order to connect, so that unless you have a COM port defined and assigned to the program, you can't bring the panels up. So my thought was, and it was interesting, is that what I will do is I'm going to take a Bluetooth module. I happen to have a Bluetooth module. Sorry about the spin. It's over here. So I got a Bluetooth module. There it is. Ta-da. And it's an HC05. And I bought another Arduino Mini. Well, Arduino Uno, I call it a Mini. And I'm going to interface these two. And what the plan is, on the PC side, of course, if I get the Bluetooth connect working correctly, the PC will see the Bluetooth and it will acknowledge it, and they'll be paired is the word. And so once they're paired, then on the PC, I can reconfigure that Bluetooth as a COM port. So I can just define it as a COM port. So now I could have a COM port serial interface going to this Arduino Uno. So what's the big, well, how do I go with that then to get to the cab control? Well, as I have seen the documentation, apparently this cab control, they have a separate module. This module is the one that powers the supply for this, and also connects to, it has a little connector on the back which goes to the track, which has the DCC square wave. What I intend to do is, I'll explain how I intend to do it, but I want to use this module and the Bluetooth, the Arduino Uno, and I'm going to communicate from the Uno directly to this cab interface. And it's going to be an interesting project, and once I get it in my head, this is DC, it's fun with HO scale stuff, and the DCC stuff is pretty cool. I really enjoy it. So you have to allow me my techie desires, and you have to tolerate this one for now. But we'll get back to railroading here shortly. In fact, as soon as I play with this and to either prove to myself it can be done or disprove it and have to come up with another solution, this is going to be the project that I'm working on for now. So let's see how this whole thing turns out. But it involves a lot of different pieces, and we'll just step through it one by one. So there's been a lot of discussion now from me about what I intend to do with the next project that I've laid out. And I think a little bit of a quick diagram will help dispel any confusion I may have created. So I just allow me to do this quickly. So as I said, I have this PC, and the PC, after my masterful repair job, it once had a working USB port, and it now does not. I also want to run JMRI on this PC. So I can't do that, as I've explained. JMRI wants to have a COM port. It has to have a COM port assigned in order to communicate with ostensibly whatever your controller is for your DCC on your track. So it occurred to me that I could this PC still has a working Bluetooth radio. We'll just call it BT. How's that? Bluetooth. That's pretty hard to see, but imagine that's a B. And this is supposed to be a radio. So anyways, it's got a working radio, so it's got this Bluetooth capability. And as we're transmitting Bluetooth, we need to have a Bluetooth receiver. But the reason I'm using a Bluetooth channel is because I can reconfigure a Bluetooth channel as a COM port on the PC, which satisfies that requirement for JMRI. So next thing I have to do is have a Bluetooth module. Well, that. And again, it's Bluetooth. And I also need something to talk to it. So I use the Arduino Uno. And the Arduino Uno has a serial port on it. Not the USB port. That's a USB, which is also on an Arduino, of course. That can be configured as a serial port, but we're going to use instead, we're just going to use a serial port that's actually marked off for the micro that's on the Arduino Uno. So that way I don't tie up the USB port. So there'll be two serial ports on the Arduino, one going to the Bluetooth. So the idea initially will be to get this Bluetooth connection paired. So once this thing is paired and I've got this as a COM port, how does that help me with my train controller? Well, the thing I don't know if you've watched previous episodes, but what I explained is that the train controller that I have, which is an NCE Power Cab, has all of these, it has a user interface, has a wheel, has buttons, and various other things, because user interface I call it. And the NCE Power Cab internally, it has a controller. And that controller produces the DCC signals based on whatever the user interface is telling it. NCE also advertises that you can use multiple controllers. So you could have another one with a separate person controlling a different train on your track. Okay? And that, of course, again, is an NCE Power Cab. But what they don't say so much in this, they'll tell you how to configure that, and they'll sell you a special cable that comes from here, and it goes to that user interface, has four connectors on it, plus it has the power input, as I'd explained. And it also has a little connector for DCC. So if the controller in this Power Cab is creating the DCC, it's coming from the Power Cab, and it's in a cable which has 6 conductors. Okay? So the 6 conductors, I said the 2 of the conductors are the DC coming from the power supply. So the power supply is actually routing DC to all 4 of these connectors. So you've got DC here, and you've got DC here. But this cable that they'll sell you, it only has 4 conductors. Okay, so out of these 4, we'll talk about that. But a pair of them must be the DC that's coming back from the power supply. So it powers up the Power Cab. The other thing it has, well, you talked about this one has, is the DCC, and that's going to your track to control your train. Well, as I mentioned, this has only 4 conductors, and I suspect then that this is some kind of a protocol, some digital protocol, bits of data. And I believe that the controller is creating this data stream, and it's addressable. Bidirectional protocol, so that where this is the master, then this one becomes a slave, and in that way, a person using the second controller would be able to enter user interface commands for their particular locomotive or device, and when it's appropriate, as it is addressable, it has an address. That address is being created from here over this protocol. So we've got 2 more lines here, and that's the protocol. And this is the protocol on this side. And any others, like you could have up to 4 of them, including the master NCE Power Cab. So if these are actually, if it's working the way I suspect, and I'll have to investigate that in the very next episode, then I have to look at, using my scope, what this protocol is. I'll have to decide how is the address created, and exactly how is the bidirectional on a 2-wire communication line being done. I'm familiar with RS-485, which is a 2-wire bidirectional addressable protocol. And that is pretty much what I suspect is taking place here. Not necessarily 485, but something very similar to it. So that in a nutshell is what's coming up, and how we do all these things. Should be pretty interesting, because I, as I'm describing all of this, don't have a clue what this protocol is that I'm talking about, the NCE protocol right here. I don't know. So we'll find out. That's the very next one. So thank you for watching. I appreciate any comments you might make. If you haven't already subscribed, I would really appreciate some additional subscriptions. But if you really don't want to have a subscription to this channel, that's fine. If this was even a little interesting, please consider leaving a like. And if you can't feel it was that interesting and you don't like it, that's fine too. But leave me a comment then, if you would, please, and say this or that about why you just didn't like it. It would be fine with me. But it will help me, as I'm new to YouTube and all of this is kind of a learning experience. Your advice could be very, very helpful. So thank you for that in advance, and we'll see you in the next episode.